Well, hello, Good News Chapel. So good to be with you. I know for a long time now we've been working our way slowly, but in a really sweet way through the Gospel of John. But I've been feeling lately that it's time that we just take a few weeks perhaps to hit the pause button on John and shift our focus in a slightly different area. I feel the need in particular to talk about this theme of community that's been coming up as we've been going through the Gospel of John. So much of John has been about these audacious promises that Jesus makes about life, that those who believe will have rivers of living water, that he has come to give us abundant life, it says in John 10. And then what we've seen throughout John 11 is the raising of Lazarus from the dead, this idea that Jesus is the one that wakens the dead to real life. And it's kind of prompted us to ask the question, well, how are we doing with our joy? Are we experiencing this kind of life? Is this kind of life that Jesus promises actually even possible? Because I think so many of us, we kind of go through the motions, we got lots of things going on, and even if we think we're doing the right stuff, we still stop and pause and ask, am I experiencing real life? And I think that's, for me as a pastor, to really make sure that this is essential, that the joy of the Christian life comes through the community of the church. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today and in the coming weeks is inspired in part from this book I've been reading called Made for People by James Earley. It's been really good. You might want to, if you're interested, you want to pick that up and read it as well. I'd love to talk to people about it. But a lot of the ideas and kind of outlines that I'm getting come from this book. And in particular, where this book goes and where I want to go and where I think John wants us to go is back to the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, to go back to the beginning. And to take a break from John and go back to Genesis feels like a very natural diversion John would want us to take. If we recall, the entire Gospel of John, especially the beginning, is really framed and outlined by the book of Genesis. Do you remember how John 1 started? John 1 through 5 says this: "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." That's how John begins his gospel. And yet, if you've read Genesis, you know this has just a direct echo of what Moses writes back in Genesis 1 through 5. Genesis 1 through 5 says this: "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day." So I think just a couple obvious similarities to see that John is taking direction from the book of Genesis is that both John 1 and Genesis 1, first of all, just the very phrasing, the first three words, "in the beginning," they both say it this way. And so that's a clear reference to that. But then even beyond that is this idea that in the beginning there was this cooperative work of the Trinity to bring about creation. In Genesis 1, it talks about how the Spirit hovers over the waters, the Spirit of God. There's a plurality in the Godhead that is working together to create things. And same thing with John 1. It says, in the beginning was the Word, referring to Jesus as the Logos, the full expression of who God is. That they are working together to bring light and life. And that's also what we see is there's this divine act of light coming into our darkness and creating new life on the earth. And so it's clear that there's a connection between the two, and the question is why? And I think it's because John is showing us that Jesus is the fulfillment of all that is promised and laid out in the book of Genesis. Genesis asks the big questions, especially Genesis 1 and 2, which we're going to look at today, asks the big questions of who is God? And secondly, who are we as humans? And then also, why are we here? What's our purpose? And finally, what's wrong with the world? Those really are the big 4 questions. And they all come up in Genesis. Who is God? Who are we? What's our purpose? And what's wrong with the world? And how does it get fixed? It's kind of connected to that one too. And what's cool is that John clearly outlines and connects his gospel with Genesis because he wants to show that the entire life and work of Jesus is to answer those 4 big questions. Specifically, that Jesus has come as the Redeemer, the one who has come to not only fix all things and to restore all things and to bring all things back to the way they were meant to be. Jesus is the full display of who God is. And his life is the light that shines the truth about who we are and what we're called to be. And it speaks real hope and purpose as to why we're here. And he has come to address the separation that sin has caused between us and God and us and one another, and to restore things back as they were always meant to be. It's really good news. And so today we're going to jump in and we're going to look a little bit more at Genesis, because I think this is where John is directing us. And so we're going to spend some time today, put the pause button on John and go back to the beginning and look a little bit at what Genesis has to say to us today. What follows in Genesis 1, if you know the story after that in the beginning paragraph, is there's this cooperative act of creation where the triune God, our God, who is 3 persons, Father, Son, and Spirit, they're all working together. And what's interesting is they're working in a very playful and joyous harmony. They're creating a universe and bringing forth life on the earth. And as they do this, you just sense this exuberance to it. It is a work of art, and that they're collaborating together in joy. The Spirit hovers over the waters, and it's there that the 3 proclaim, "Let there be light." And over the next 6 days of creation, together they weave this tapestry of sky and oceans and sun and stars and moon and shoreline. And on this earth grows vegetation and trees. There's mango trees and avocados and rose bushes and majestic redwoods, on whose branches sit a vast display of birds and wildlife. There's flocks of macaws going through the air, egrets and woodpeckers. And then filling the oceans are vast pods of dolphins and blue whales and hermit crabs. And across the great savannas are countless herds of caribou, elephants, and meerkats. It's just this amazing display of everything in the universe that's being created and then on the earth. And you get this sense, as you read Genesis 1, that the 3 persons of the Trinity, they're not just kind of working together to slop some product out and get it done. No. Rather, you get this sense that there's this joy going on. There's this exuberance, and they really delight in each other's company. And there's this kind of synergy that happens in their friendship that expresses itself in the wonder and the beauty of creation. The Father, Son, and Spirit are the deepest of friends. Friendship is at the very core of our God and of the universe. And after each day of creation, the Holy 3, they look at what they have created together and they declare it's good. It's good. They stand back and say, whew, that was good. And I think when they say that, it not only refers to the goodness, to the quality and the beauty of what's been produced each day. That's part of it. It's good. But it's also a reflection on the experience of creating together and their friendship. How good and right and natural and wonderful the experience is. This kind of intimate friendship is just so, so good. And I think it's important for us to know that what's at the center of our universe and what holds every molecule together is not some cold, indifferent, impersonal force of nature. No, but rather there's a joyful bond of intimate friendship at the center of the universe that holds and is at the center of who our God is. It's important to know this because, as we'll see, you and I, as creations of God, are invited into this divine friendship. Might be hard to believe, but it's true, and as we'll see. And God, as we'll see, after the first 5 days, he's not done. Even after he does all the things, with space and earth and vegetation and animals and all the other stuff that are around, there's one last thing to create on the sixth day. The final piece, it seems to, everything's been ready just to place this thing here, like the cherry on top of the sundae. And here it says in verse 26 of Genesis 1, "Then God said, 'Let us make mankind in our image and after our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.'" So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. So it's kind of cool. The Trinity talks it over. And on this sixth day, they decide together, let us make mankind in our image and our likeness. Notice the pronouns, that God is a plurality. There are three persons here in God. And I know that's hard for us to conceive, but that's the holiness of who our God is, 3 in 1. And also that men and women here in Genesis 1, they're together are created to display the fullness of God. Both male and females are created in the image of God. It's important, though, humans, as we'll see, we're not gods ourselves, but somehow God has put his stamp on us that is unique from every other animal that he's created. We as humans reflect and image forth his glory to the world. And we're given a certain amount of dominion and care and stewardship of God's creation. We are created for a unique relationship. We have been given a capacity to have intimacy with our God, unlike any other organism on the earth. And at the end of the sixth day, God stands back and takes in the whole creation, the wide tapestry of light and design and life and abundance and everything they've created together, with women and men now together, tying it all together like the cherry on top. And the Trinity stands back and says, it is very good. All of it together is just goodness displayed. Now, if we just stopped here, if we only had Genesis chapter 1, we might ask, that's great. So what's the problem? Where did it go wrong? What's wrong with all this? This sounds wonderful. And many of you are probably aware that there are actually 2 creation accounts in the book of Genesis. Well, sort of. There's still just one creation event, but we're told it in 2 different perspectives or 2 different times. Chapter 1 of Genesis, which we read just a good chunk of just now, gives kind of the big overall umbrella view of how it all happened, of the creation account in Genesis. It simply states how God created man in his own image, male and female. He created them. There were 2 distinct genders, yet God creates them both with equal dignity and worth and responsibility to image forth God's character and his goodness to the world. But you may be aware that there's more to this story as to how these 2 genders came about. You see, because the sixth day is so vital to us and to our existence today, to understand that, the Bible kind of rewinds the tape in chapter 2 and zooms in much more closely on the sixth day and how everything unfolded. And so we're going to pick up here in Genesis chapter 2, where again, we've rewound the tape and zoomed in now on that sixth day of what actually happened on that day. Starting in verse 15 of chapter 2, it says, "The Lord God took the man," or the Adam, and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of knowledge and of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. Then the Lord God said, It is not good that man should be alone. Now let's pause right there at verse 18. So we round the tape, and you see at first, God did not create Adam and Eve at the same time. At first, he creates just Adam. He gives Adam the rules and the consequences for obedience within the garden. And then God notices something after he does all this that's not quite right about the whole scene. There's something wrong with this picture. And notice what it says in verse 18. It is not good that man should be alone. And this is like the record scratch. This should really catch our attention, that something God created, he says it is not good. 6 times in chapter 1, each of the days, it's followed up by saying, God declaring it is good. And on that 6th day, he says it's very good. And so it's kind of this repetition. We hear it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. Well, this really should grab our attention when God says it is not good. What is not good? All of a sudden, something which was created, the Trinity says it's not good. This has to grab our attention. And just when you think everything is moving along without a hitch, suddenly there's this record scratch and the music stops. What is it? God says it is not good for man to be alone. And that's kind of shocking when you think about it. Consider, Adam had the one thing you would think would satisfy him completely. Adam walked with God. Adam was known by God. Adam had intimacy and relationship with God. Isn't God the all-sufficient one who satisfies our every need? Isn't God enough? Here's the question. Is it possible to be lonely with God? You ever felt that way? You have your faith. Maybe you know your Bible pretty good. Maybe you've been obedient. Maybe you've been living the Christian life. Do you still feel lonely? Do you still feel detached? Do you still feel like there's something missing sometimes? Maybe you have the American dream even. Maybe you got a great family and you got a car and a career and a house and whatever stuff you think you need. You got all that, and yet you still feel like there's something missing? You got everything, and yet it doesn't feel right. It sounds almost blasphemous to say it, that you can be lonely with God. And yet it's true, because God himself has just said it. If you and I are to experience the fullness of God and the joy of life that he promises, then it means we need something more than God. We need people. God has made us for relationship. It is not good for us to be alone. In the same way that God is in a community and an intimacy of friendship, so he calls us and says our full expression, our full ability to appreciate and worship God will come only when we're united together with people. That book I mentioned earlier, Made for People by James Early, he quotes it, he says it this way. It's a quote I really appreciated. He writes, God designed us to need people. You cannot experience God the way you were made to, until you experience him alongside others. According to the Almighty himself, God is necessary but not sufficient to the full life of flourishing that he created for us. That is not to say God will not meet us in our loneliness. He will. But as we see with Adam, he will not leave us there either, because we were made by God for more than God. Our fullest spirituality is only possible with others. Our intended existence only works in community. Our highest call is only realized when we pursue it alongside others. In other words, you need friends to be who God made you to be. That's pretty big. You see, because God is a community that is fueled by friendship, so we are created in the image of God, which means that we are created for community and also fueled by friendship. Your friends and your friendships are what will either make you or break you in life. You can have everything else, whatever else you want, but without community, gospel-centered community, vulnerable community, broken, messy community where people really know the real you and the real you gets to be known, you'll be missing something, and you won't be able to experience the fullness of life that Jesus promises. This is where we're going to be moving in the next several weeks. This is why I've just been feeling as a pastor, and as we've been in the Gospel of John, that the Spirit is leading us to pause here and to take a few weeks to really sit with this issue of community, to ask the hard questions. Are we experiencing the fullness of life that Jesus promises? And then are we being connected to our church and in the body, to a family? Not just that we go to a building or that we're hanging around a lot of people. I mean, the issue is not being alone. There's nothing wrong with being alone. I like being alone. I like my solace. I like my quietness. I need that. I'm kind of a recluse in many ways. I'm an introvert, actually, in many ways. I like and need to be alone at times. The problem is, sometimes when we're around a lot of people, maybe inside a church on Sunday or whatever, to be around a lot of people and yet to still feel alone at those times, where people don't really know me and I'm not really able to open up my story and I don't really know them. That is the kind of loneliness that we're talking about. How to develop deep, vulnerable friendships. What does life-giving community look like at Good News Chapel? And as I hope we see today, that this idea of community is not something that's optional. It's not something like the icing on the cake. It's great if you have it, but if you don't, it's no big deal. No, it is the cake. Community is the center of who God is, and it's the center of what he's calling the church to be, and it's the center of what it means to be a Christian. You can't be a Christian and not be connected to the church. There's no precedent for that in the Bible at all. To be a Lone Ranger Christian is to be not a Christian. To be a Christian means you are saved into a family. It's not always easy. Sometimes we get hurt. Sometimes it's really messy. But that doesn't mean it's not something we have to fight for. Because friendships and relationships are important to our own experience and to our witness of the gospel to the world. The kind of life Jesus promises, that same type of vital, flourishing, creative, abundant life, the same kind of life we saw in Genesis 1, where the Father, Son, and the Spirit are creating the universe, and there's this kind of abundant joy, this synergy, this creation of things that's more than the sum of its parts. To be able to look at all that and say, man, that is so good, so right, that the way friendship can work together to make beautiful things. That's exactly what God is calling us to as well as the church. And it comes through the community. So my question again, and to hold this, and I hope two things. One, I hope it develops conversation with everybody. If you're watching this, if you're part of Good News Chapel, the question is, what does life-giving community look like at Good News Chapel? And also for me as a pastor is, I want to have conversations with you on this exact issue. We're in the summer months right now, and to have just several weeks now just to kind of pray through this, consider this, talk to this. It's hard for many of us to have the margins. We live in a culture that it's not going to help us with this, but keeps us incredibly busy, frenetic, distracted. We have lots of ways and lots of excuses why we don't make time for community. And yet, I think we'll see, as we saw today and as we're going to continue to see, that there are no excuses for this, that God is calling us to make time for friendships. And so my heart as a pastor is how to hear your story, how to hear where you're at. How can I help? How do we think of ways to make groups, to make opportunities throughout the week where a group of people can be meeting together to study the word together, to pray together, to hear each other's stories, and to develop those kind of deep friendships that bring real life. That's my prayer. That's my heart. And that's where we're going. Alrighty, Good News Chapel. God bless. Bye-bye.